Hi, I'm Jim Matthew Sadler.
And I'm WIM Natasha Regan. Welcome to this game, which is Leela against Komodo from Tcec 17. The big news is that Leela has won the group stage, and this is the first time because for a number of years Stockfish has been winning this stage of the Tcec. And we're now in for a treat, a Leela against Stockfish 100 game match for the finals. So this game, Leela v Komodo, is one of the ones that propelled Leela to this stage, and we're going to see a King's Indian, the Makogonov variation. And so people like Kosenkov have played this for white, and people like Lanka have done the setup for black that we will see Komodo adopting. The game turns into a really nice positional game. Leela puts pressure on the d6 pawn throughout and gets very good pieces. Leela consistently swaps off all of black's active pieces and so remains the more active throughout the game.
Yeah, it's a very nice game. Actually, a beautiful template King's Indian for white, actually. So very instructive. And yeah, I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's have a look. Okay, let's have a look at this. It started d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, the typical King's Indian, knight f3, and now h3, which is the Makogonov system. I'm going to explain what the idea of this is, actually, as we go through the game, because it becomes pretty clear what white is aiming for. As Natasha said, this has been played by a lot of very good players. I think there's a lot of Chinese players who play this. In my day, as a professional, Mikhail Krasenkov, a fantastic attacking player, now representing Poland, played it a lot. He also wrote a fantastic book of his best games, which well worth checking out, actually. And of the modern players, also Tomaszewski's a big expert in this line, 2730 rated Russian player. And you see games from Magnus and Nepomniachtchi and Aronyan in this, so pretty major system this. And Makogonov, that was one of the strongest players in the 1940s in Russia. A slightly enigmatic figure who seemed to stop playing chess in around just around the Second World War, but yeah, awesomely strong. So the system that black plays here is very typical. E5 striking the center, D5 again very normal for white. And now this last move of the TCC book, which was H6. And it's a bit of a point.
Komodo didn't have any choice with that move.
No, Komodo.
This was the position where they can start to choose what they want to play.
That's right. It must be said this move H6 is kind of a poison chalice in a way. I mean, not terrible, but slightly. This bishop, certainly with a plan that black plays in the game, which, as Natasha mentioned, was a type of plan played a lot by a very creative Latvian player called Zigords Lanka. And also Victor Bologan, a very strong Moldavian player, has played this as well. Actually, you sort of think that the bishop would be much better just left on g5 than being pushed back to e3, because black's going to go for a queenside plan. And well, this bishop, when the bishop retreats here to e3, it's much better placed to deal with black's counterplay than on g5. And also this move h6 does weaken the black king side, and well, we'll see another example of that. So yeah, I think that's probably a slightly unfortunate move to end the book on. But it's not lost by any means. It's just an extra little thing in white's favour. But well, always dangerous in these types of positions to give Leela any advantage, of course. So knight c5, knight d2, a5. So black, very typical idea in the King's Indian. Black attacks e4, and then afterwards stops white from chasing the knight away with b4. But I want you to just probably one good place to start looking at the value of that pawn on h3, the Makogonov system, because what you can see is that White's bishop is pretty solid on e3, and Black can't play knight g4 in order to chase it away. So that's one very big point of the Makogonov system. You want to be able to play this bishop to e3 later, after you've played the bishop to g5 first, just to try and extract a weakening from Black. It's quite a subtle system. And then what you want to do, you want to play the knight to d2 to protect the pawn on e4, and then play the bishop to e2. And this whole setup, bishop on e3, bishop on e2, knight to d2 for White, it's a very typical way of meeting the King's Indian. And if you can get it with White, that normally means that you're pretty well placed. The bishop on e3, the bishop on e2 stops knight h5. So because White could just take it and win a pawn. So that typical counterplay of knight h5 to f4 is much more tricky for Black to achieve. The knight being on d2, once the bishop has moved to e3, that gives White a lot of opportunities to expand on the queen side with a3 and b4, and then play c5, and that knight on d2 can come to c4. So it's basically a very harmonious setup for White. And the only thing that White has had to do is, well, you could say, is waste a tempo on h2 to h3. So very, it's a very harmonious system for White, and well, quite dangerous for Black. So Black played bishop d7, and now this typical move from White.
Try plans like knight h7 on knight e8 and then e5.
That's all possible. These have been played as well. The only problem with these sort of systems is that, well, White plays g4, and after f5, well, you've got various ways of dealing with this, but let's just say one typical way of doing it is to take off, and then to take off like this, and maybe throw in bishop g4 first, and afterwards you'll bring your knight to e4, well, the g file's opened against Black's king, and yeah, what Black's gained is not really that great. You've got to be very careful about these. Sometimes these are playable with Black, but the other thing is that normally you really try and avoid playing the the pawn to h6 in these sort of things, because it weakens the light squares, and gives White some extra entry points on the king's side. So yeah, I mean it's possible, but it has its risks as well. Pardon me. So bishop d7, and now g4, very typical move for White. What is White aiming for? Well, you're going to see what happens. c6, h4. Might feel a little bit odd. I mean, White's played h3, now he's playing h4, but there's a very big reason for playing this move, and that is after cd and a4, which is all very typical for Black. It's this idea g5. And this move g4 to g5, well, first of all, you can see it's only possible because the bishop was chased away from g5, so Black allowed this. And secondly, of course, with the pawn on h6, well, when White plays g5, Black has to play hg, and then the h file is opened. And that's not, it's not like it's winning or mating straight away for White, far from that. But, well, it's a nice bonus, and the only person who's going to be able to use the h-file in the short term is White, so it's really an advantage for White here. So Black played knight h7, attacking that pawn on g5, and Leela played the calm and typical rook g1, just protecting the pawn on g5, and, well, now dilemma time starts for Black, really. I mean, Black could try and play f7 to f6 because, that bishop on g7 and the knight on h7, they're really passive pieces. They're not contributing anything at all, and it's hard to see how you'll get them into the game. But if you play a move like f6, then, White can play g takes f6, and well, Black's weakened his structure again, more isolated pawns. White's attacking the g6 pawn, and it's not really clear what sort of counterplay Black's going to get. So, yeah, but if you don't do it, of course, then your pieces stay passive. So I think, for human players, these are difficult dilemmas. And I think certainly, I'm not sure whether this exact position has been played before, but, certainly these types of positions generally score very, very well for white. So Komodo plays Queen B8, which is a very reasonable move, trying to support B7 to B5. If you played a move like Queen A5, which looks very natural, then Knight C4 hits the Queen and the pawn on B6, and that's really the problem. It's just Black doesn't really have the means to get the pushes that he wants without creating too many new weaknesses. So Queen B8, and now this very typical NN move with Bishop B5. So it's the typical stuff that we've seen so often from AlphaZero. You exchange off the opponent's active pieces, and you leave the opponent with passive pieces. And well, you look at the two bishops. That bishop on G7 is a bit of a nightmare for Black at the moment, and the bishop on D7 is quite active. So we'll exchange it.
Yeah, so Black's going to be left pretty much with those, bishop on G7 and knight on H7. And so White's play on the queen side and threatening that D6 pawn. It's not easy for Black to oppose that at all. No,
it's quite an unpleasant position. I mean, as always, you need to do a little bit of calculation here because, Leela leaves the D3 square unprotected. So that is a slight danger, but and Komodo tries to exploit it with Queen C8 actually, just to get into H3, for example. But Leela plays Queen G4, and it turns out that Black's threats are somewhat illusory. After Queen C2, for example, I go Knight D6, Queen B2, and King G2, and White's going to play Knight C4, Rook B1, that B7 pawn is weak, and those just passive pieces on G7 and H7. If they were, a little bit somewhere else, if they were, a little bit more active, then Black might be fine. But this is just really very difficult for Black. Very difficult for Black. He's just getting completely squeezed. And basically, if it's so important then to keep that pawn on D6, well, you can see how difficult Black's position is going to be, because he's going to have to put everything basically to try and defend it. So Komodo actually gets the maximum out of its defensive structure. Plays Rook A6 to attack D6. White plays King E2 to chase the knight back. Check King D1. Obviously, I think human players might tend to be a little bit worried and swap off those queens just to make sure. But Leela's not worried. Just calm move Rook B1, and then Komodo decides that this is the best time to take on G4, and then an important defensive move, Rook C8, which stops another knight from getting into C4. And this is basically, essentially this sort of sets the scene for the future battles, because, White's got a knight on B5, although that's not a very stable square. It could get chased away. And White would also want to get a knight onto C4. So really getting control of the C5. But that's not easy to achieve. And Leela has a plan for doing it, but as always, Leela loves a good shuffle. So we're going to see quite a bit of toing and froing here, as Leela, I guess, enjoys the scale of its advantage. The funny thing is that when the queens got exchanged, I was thinking, oh well, this must be long term, just one for White strategically, just with all these weaknesses in the Black position. But Leela was at 1.17, which is a clear advantage, but not winning yet. And the Stockfish that was watching the game was at 0.5 actually, which is only a slight White advantage. I was just thinking, well, this must be winning, right? So it's funny how you can get influenced by that. But this is really a very difficult position for Black. So what does Leela do? Well, Leela's first step is to kick the knight out of D3 and actually to occupy the H file. Just that sort of keeps Black honest, you could say, with that knight on H7. Just introducing potential threats, and then the king moves away. So a little bit of consolidation. The rook on a flexible square on H2, covering the second rank, and also giving White the opportunity to double up on the H file. That also probably dissuades this black bishop from trying to move to e7 to d8 to b6. Because if you played bishop e7, I guess actually you could probably just take and go rook h1, which looks quite dangerous with rook h8 check to come.
It really does take black a lot of moves to activate these pieces.
Yeah, I mean, this is really the it's just a big problem for black. It's just very, very unpleasant, to try and do anything at all in this position. So what you see is that Komodo actually just basically takes the policy decision to just to sit and wait, and just if a piece gets moves, it moves back to where it was, and just wait for all that. And Leela's testing things out, maybe trying a few little tactics, see whether they work, and then going back. It's, I mean, again, this Russian coach that I've mentioned a few times in the last few videos, this guy called Michal Shereshevsky, who coined the principle, do not hurry. He would be very proud of this, I think, because Leela is doing anything except hurrying. But now, Leela starts to take action, and it all happens quite quickly. Key point again, just to say again, is that White's got to get control of the C file to get outposts for its knights. And well, strangely enough, this surprising move is what kicks it off. Komodo plays rook there, and now b4, gaining space on the queen side. So obviously, when the rook has to retreat from a5, the white knight on c3 gets its outpost on b5 back. And this is a really dangerous bit of it, knight on b5. So Komodo went king e7 to defend, bishop e3, standard moves, b6. Probably had to be played eventually to try and get a knight onto c5. And now this move, rook d2. So White is actually going to fight for the c file with rook dc2. And, gradually you can see that White's starting to, remove all the activity, actually drain all the activity from Black's pieces. So rook c4, rook a4, Komodo's trying to keep some sort of control of the c file. This very calm move, and now bishop d2. So that bishop's coming round to b4 to attack the pawn on d6 and also cut off the coordination between the two black rooks. So Black took, rook c4 check, and brought the knight into d3, just trying to keep on holding White back. But after rook h8, Leela is very, very positive here. Well, the reason for that is that Leela spies, just a number of ways to improve its position further. And, well, I mean, the black king is going to be pretty tight as well. So, rook c8, knight c1. This is a very typical idea. Going to exchange off Black's active piece again. So the knight on d3 is probably Black's most active piece. So just Leela tries to exchange it off. So knight c1, bishop c1, and now a little bit of optimization. Knight on a7, knight c6 check, really making this very awkward. The king goes back to e8. And now, well, if you look at the position, what's Black's active piece? What's Black's piece that White wants to exchange? It's pretty obvious.
The knight on c5.
That's right. It's the knight on c5. So Leela doesn't waste any time. Whack, exchanges it. So d takes c5 would allow knight takes c5. Just winning a pawn. And of course would also give White a very nice passed d pawn. So Black took on c5, but now White's got a passed a pawn, and Komodo tries to distract White from that a pawn, but Leela's having none of it. Rook h1 stops the pawn from queening, rook c1, and rook c2. And well, if you look at the position, I mean, Black's finally managed to get the bishop a bit active, but this knight on c6 is dominating the black rook, and well, White's just simply going to push that a pawn all the way. Black's also going to be a little bit careful. If Black plays bishop e3 straight away, we've got this move rook h2, followed by invasion, which is very nasty. So black plays king f8 in order to cover g7, but now this move is very strong. Rook e2, preventing the bishop from coming into e3. c1 is not a good substitute because now the pawn's coming to a5, and the king comes to b5, and the king comes to b6. You just cannot stop white at all. a6, and well, I mean, this pawn just went through to queen, and white won very soon afterwards. So I hope you enjoyed that game. I thought it was a very nice and actually beautiful template for how to play in the King's Indian. Setting up this this bishop e2. Sorry, I'm zooming very fast there, but setting up this bishop e2, bishop e3 structure in the opening, which is a very smooth and harmonious structure. Then pushing the kingside pawns, very, very typical again, just to chase away the knight, remove pressure on e4, and also block the black pieces behind, well, behind its own pawns. And then giving black those dilemmas about, do I try and break out, but then create more weaknesses? And then really the rest of the game was Leela exchanging off black's active pieces one by one, and gradually encroaching, gradually removing the barriers that black has put on the position. So this move rook c8, for example, this whole setup where black's stopping white from really fighting for the c file, well, Leela gradually, painfully, you might say, move by move, just knocks away all those supporting pillars of black's position, and then in the end, once Leela has the c file after, well, quite a lot of careful shuffling. Move on, move on, move on, move on, move on. Then it goes very, very quickly because once you drive back the black rooks and once you fight for the c file, then well, black's got nothing left at all. It can't even stop white from regrouping its knights and getting steadily better positions. So there we are. I hope that that's instructive. I really would think if you're a white King's Indian player, then definitely make a note of this game, because I think this can give you a lot of tips for your own games. Yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, then please subscribe. And also, yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen our book Game Changer, then do take a look at it. It's got lots of fantastic chess like this, lots of beautiful positional chess like this, actually. All right, well, thanks very much for watching. Keep well, keep safe, and keep your eyes peeled for more videos from us.
Thank you for watching.
Thanks very much.